We interrupt your program to issue a severe warning for an impending emergency making its way to your area. We urge you to be watchmen of the times and to be prepared with the essential knowledge and supplies for the wake of the final hour.
Welcome to the Final Hour podcast, coming to you from the original Living Word Christian Center out of Minneapolis, Minnesota. My name is Jim Hammond. This is Lonaiah Farrell, John Gapp, and our producer, Dee Schrader.
Esteemed producer.
Lonaiah's
that's nice.
had a lot of coffee today
have.
and been extremely entertaining the last 15 minutes. But
So hope it keeps going on.
Thanks, guys.
Take another
Keep it
sip,
rolling.
Lonaiah. Take another sip. And so, listen, we've got a great day. We just want to let the listeners and subscribers and viewers know that we appreciate you and thank you so much for subscribing. We just prayed for you, and that you are in my prayers every single day, every morning.
Absolutely.
We've got a lot. We're going to talk about the last bowl judgment along with the Battle of Armageddon. And but after that, stay tuned because we've got an earthquake in Iran, China buying up more farmland, crazy things going on in the Netherlands with the animals and the farmers. The White House's new liberal order, yes, this is real, they're saying it. And we've got oil reserves going to other countries. And so, but to just kick it off, we've been talking about the bowl judgments. Right before we get into the seventh bowl judgment, or sometimes King James calls it a vial being poured out, you have to talk about the Battle of Armageddon, the gathering of the armies and that assault on Jerusalem that can be found throughout Scripture. Yeah. Many scholars believe that the book of Joel spells out some of the reasons for the battle. Joel 3:1-3, for behold, in those days, in that time, when I shall bring again the captivity of Judah and Jerusalem. And this is just kind of skipping through time here, these three verses. I will also gather all nations, bring them down into the valley of Jehoshaphat, and will plead with them there for my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And they have cast lots for my people, have given a boy for a harlot, and sold a girl for wine, that they might drink. This is when Israel obviously it starts out being scattered to the nations of the world. God brings them back. They become a nation in 1948. Yep. They continue to come back. You just saw Ukrainian Jews going back to Israel a few years ago. Ethiopian Jews. Basically what God is saying in Joel 3:1-3 is one generation from 1948. Within the lifespan of one generation, you're going to see the Battle of Armageddon, which in essence happens right before the judgment of the nations. What we just read about in Joel, Jesus says this generation will not pass away until all these things are fulfilled. He's talking about the generation from when Israel became a nation in 1948. And the Bible says one generation is 80 years. Go figure that. That's 2028. You can run your time on that. One generation from the time of the fig tree. When the fig tree was reestablished, 1948, 80 years, 2028. We just read in Joel that he's bringing the nations into judgment in the valley of Jehoshaphat.
Interesting.
The valley of Jehoshaphat is the valley between the Temple Mount and the Mount of Olives. And so Jesus lands, or his feet touch the Mount of Olives. And according to Zechariah 14, he will judge the nations coming right out of Armageddon. Of the world in regards to how they treated the nation of Israel. Did they split up the land, which our administration is trying to do right now? Zechariah 14:1-3, you can see it being talked about here. Behold, the day of the Lord cometh, and thy spoil shall be divided in the midst of thee. For I will gather all nations against Jerusalem to battle, and the city shall be taken. This is Armageddon. And the houses rifled, the women ravished. That means raped. Half the city shall go forth into captivity, and the residue of the people shall be cut off from the city. And then shall the Lord go forth and fight against those nations. A lot of scholars believe half of Jerusalem will fall because of that phrase. As when he fought in the day of the battle, the Lord is going to come forth right at the end there. But we just read phrases: the city being taken, houses rifled, women ravished, half the city goes into captivity. And as you can see at the end of verse 3, the Lord steps in and starts his side of the fight.
Yeah.
And God doesn't leave them there on their own, as you can see. And then one more set of scripture here, Zechariah 12, 1-5. The burden of the word of the Lord for Israel saith, which stretcheth forth the heavens and layeth the foundation of the earth and formeth the spirit of man within him. Behold, I will make Jerusalem a cup of trembling unto all people round about. And when they shall be in the siege both against Judah and against Jerusalem. This is Armageddon. And in that day will I make Jerusalem a burdensome stone for all people. All that burden themselves with it shall be cut in pieces, though all the people of the earth be gathered together against it. Again, this is Armageddon. In that day, and this is how the Lord answers, saith the Lord, I will smite every horse. That's probably what John is seeing is a form of tank in this well, this is Zechariah. What Zechariah's seeing, they don't know what to call these things.
Right.
So they'd never even seen an elephant, right? So I will smite every horse with astonishment and his rider with madness. I will open mine eyes upon the house of Judah. I will smite every horse of the people with blindness. And the governors of Judah shall say in their heart, the inhabitants of Jerusalem shall be my strength, and the Lord of hosts their God. He's talking about making Jerusalem a burdensome stone. And it has been a burdensome stone. No one has ever been able to solve the problem between the Jews and the Arabs, especially in regards to Jerusalem. And we see here in Zechariah 12, 2-5, it looks like these armies are slaughtering each other. The armies of the Antichrist are slaughtering each other, just like what happened in 2 Chronicles with King Jehoshaphat and in southern Israel, Judea, when those three armies united against them. It looks like the same kind of thing here happens here. These armies are going to turn on each other, the ones that march on to Jerusalem, the armies of the Antichrist. And we get an interesting detail here in Revelation 14:20. Yeah. The grapes in the winepress were trodden down outside the city. This is the Amplified. And blood poured from the winepress, reaching as high as horses' bridles for a distance of 200 miles. So what this is saying is the bloodshed from the Antichrist army will spread just about 200 miles, and the blood will be as high as you could picture a horse's bridle. So imagine all that blood from those armies. So it will be a very bloody thing. Right. And we saw in Zechariah 14 in those scriptures we read, the Lord goes forth and fights against those nations. And even those nations, even though they have guns and tanks and missiles, God fights a lot of times in the supernatural. Right. Earthquakes, meteors, 130-pound hailstones. Sometimes he sows seeds of confusion and deception into the opposing armies, and they destroy each other. Yeah. And then after God takes care of those armies, you've got blood chest high for 180 miles long. Remember, it's a 200 million man army. Right. Just that alone coming from the east. Revelation 16:17, the seventh angel, the last vial, the last bowl, poured out his vial into the air, and there came a great voice of the temple of heaven from the throne saying, it is done. But before everyone can relax, Revelation 16:18-21, there were voices and thunders and lightnings, and there was a great earthquake, such as was not since men were upon the earth, so mighty an earthquake and so great. The great city was divided into 3 parts, and the cities of the nations fell, and great Babylon came in remembrance before God to give unto her the cup of wine of the fierceness of his wrath. Every island fled away. The mountains were not found. And there fell upon men a great hail out of the heavens. Every stone about the weight of a talent. That's 130 pounds.
Yeah.
Wow.
And men at that time blasphemed God because of the plague of hail. For the plague, therefore, was exceeding great. We have a global earthquake, convulsed the planet, the entire planet, causing this is right out of Armageddon, causing entire cities to collapse completely. You have islands in the ocean are swamped by some tsunamis so that they disappear under the oceans. Mountains fall apart and crumble completely. And after that, you have hail the size of 130 pounds fall from the sky. All the buildings would have been destroyed by that earthquake, and there's really no place to hide.
Right.
You have humanity still cursing God at this point.
Yeah.
And at this point, God's wrath is done. We've gone through 21 judgments. Just to make some points on top of this, sorry, I'm taking all the time here.
That's
John.
okay. It's good stuff.
But we're going to get into you guys in just a second, just to make some points here while we're talking about Armageddon. Right now, the Biden administration is trying to divide Jerusalem, like we talked about in Joel, right?
Yeah.
Biden's State Department is trying to open a Palestinian consulate in Jerusalem. This is a fact.
Yeah.
You can see it in the article on June 2nd in Israel 365 News. A spokesperson for the Biden administration named Ned Price, quoting him, "We remain committed to opening a Palestinian consulate in Jerusalem. We continue to believe it can be an important way for our country to engage with and provide support to the Palestinian people. We are continuing to discuss this with our Israeli and Palestinian partners, and we will continue to consult with Congress as well." Still quoting him. Meanwhile, at this very moment, we have a dedicated team of colleagues, thanks, Ned, working in Jerusalem in our Palestinian Affairs Office, focused on our engagement and outreach with the Palestinians. You can look that article yourself. Up yourself, June 2nd, Israel 365. Ned Price, the spokesperson for the Biden administration, goes on in this article and talks about the Biden and his administration is all for a two-state solution.
Yeah.
They want pre-1967 borders, which Israel won fairly after they were surrounded by a 1 million-man army. A lot what will happen with Ezekiel 38.
Right.
And in 1967, everybody watched kind of what Russia did to the Ukraine. They built up a 1 million-man army estimated everyone, Jordan, Syria, Egypt. Israel's crying out to the world, help us, help us.
Right.
So you know what Israel did? They attacked, and they took back East Jerusalem. They took the Golan Heights. They took the West Bank, and so it's their land. Okay, they want it. They want it, and the Biden administration is wanting all that to return.
Yeah.
Right.
To everybody they took land from, and so East Jerusalem they want to go to the Palestinians. The Golan Heights they want to go to the Syrians, and so the Biden administration is opening a consulate, which is basically an embassy in East Jerusalem, recognizing East Jerusalem as belonging to the Palestinians and not to the Jews. You could, in a way, say the Biden administration is pushing us closer to Armageddon, because you see what happens right after Armageddon is those nations are judged. And because there are scholars out there that believe this will be why the world in the end comes against Israel. What the world will be using as an excuse by what we just read in Joel, because the Jews refuse to give up East Jerusalem, and they want them to give up what's called the West Bank, which is the hills surrounding Jerusalem.
Right.
That's what the Jews call Judea and Samaria. And if they gave up the West Bank, you guys, it would displace 600,000 Jews. There's only 7 million people in Israel. 600,000 of them would be displaced. In Judea and Samaria, the Jews would lose 400,000 homes. The Jews of Judea and Samaria are vowing 10 new Jewish settlements to be kicked off or started during Biden's visit to Israel. Well, good for them.
Which is next July 13th and 14th is when President Biden will be there.
So the Jews are fighting back. They're more or less saying during Biden's visit, they're going to kick off this building program to say, no, we're not giving up anything.
Right.
They're not giving up East Jerusalem. They're not giving up Judea or Samaria. And I know that the Antichrist makes peace originally in the beginning of the tribulation, but a lot of scholars believe this is what the battle of Armageddon is over. East Jerusalem. So I'm sorry to take up 14 minutes and 23 seconds.
Well, and
there, you guys, what do you think about that? He's pushing us towards Armageddon.
Yeah, but we have Israel having some new elections because basically their government broke up. We talked about that last week.
Yeah, praise the Lord.
So I'm hoping that the interim government until November elections or somewhere later this year. I'm hoping that they have some strength in leadership to continue to push Israeli.
I know. I just have a theory about that because you have the Israeli government that just kind of dissolved, and now you have England.
Yeah,
Boris Johnson is resigning. Yeah. So you're like, kind of, what's going on here?
Right.
Is this a play to get their people in? Because Biden is meeting with the interim prime minister of Israel next week when he goes.
They're going to try, but I will tell you this, and I know a lot of people. I know numerous ex-government, I'll say government agents, numerous ex-special ops people over there, and by the end, before Bennett was thrown out, he was consulting Netanyahu. That is the word, that they're basically doing what Netanyahu is telling them to do because what he did actually worked for 8 years. And so we'll see what happens there. I pray that Netanyahu, if you can pray for something positive, pray for Israel. You're supposed to pray for Israel every day. Pray for Netanyahu to get back in there. And that will at least slow down the murders. And Israel will not have their hands tied. They will fight. They will fight for everything, and they won't give up.
I mean, we just heard they're going to fight.
They won't give up one thing under Netanyahu, so we hope he gets it back. But and with that, we got some. Iran had a major. How big was the earthquake?
A 6.1 earthquake. Okay.
6.1. That's pretty big.
Yes, southern Iran at 2:00 on Saturday, and it killed 5 people and injured at least 50. And when I was talking to John about this article yesterday, so they had said that Iran has had 150 quakes and tremors over the past month.
And so I think that's interesting. When she read that to me, I was like, well, I mean, we've been talking about a month about Iran having some new weapons.
Right.
Are they testing stuff?
Right.
That's because I know they have underground facilities. Are they testing stuff that is causing tremors? Or it could just be Israel's really good with making making some interesting things happen with their land. But
well, you had the Iran earthquake, and then last month you had the earthquake in Afghanistan.
Killed 1,000.
Killed 1,000 people. Goodness. And then I was reading that there's been some earthquakes or activity in South Carolina. So I know, yesterday.
Oh, yeah.
Yes.
Yeah.
And then you just had the Georgia stones
stones
explode out of nowhere.
Yeah, like lightning struck and they just...
Okay, interesting about the lightning, because I don't know if anyone else has noticed, but the lightning activity has been
wild.
Crazy lately. I was watching a video yesterday. This person was driving and the truck in front of them got struck by lightning and exploded.
Well, we were talking about maybe 3 weeks ago about government interfering with weather.
Yes.
And I've also been watching. I don't have a lot of sources to back this up, but in the last couple of weeks, there have been releases of news from the government about things that they are doing to control the weather.
Yes.
Where they have a spray of certain chemicals that they put in the air that makes the weather disappear. Basically, makes clouds
so it's like the
dissipate.
Truman Show?
Kind of, but it makes clouds dissipate. So it looks like it's rain, and then all of a sudden it dissipates because it runs into that specific set of chemicals. But if you disrupt
Mother Nature.
Yeah, if you disrupt the weather patterns, it's going to come somewhere else. It always makes equilibrium from one place to another, and if you mess with it, it's gonna.
But the earthquakes, I wonder if Israel even is going to have to take out the Iranian nukes.
Right, or
because
if it's going to just...
if the earthquakes are going to ruin their nuclear bomb.
Yeah,
right?
I mean, this said
it makes you wonder if that's where that's going.
Well, this said it had 30 aftershocks, which measured between... So the earthquake was 6.1, but the aftershocks were 6.3 to 6.1 to 6.3. Just the aftershocks.
Just as big as the original. Yeah.
And so that's something to watch. Always watch what Iran's doing.
Yep.
And now we got John with
update on our farmers.
It's not just Bill Gates buying America's farmland. Right.
So and we were talking about last week, Bill Gates was his people were buying up North Dakota farmland.
Yep.
And the AG stepped in, but yesterday there was a ruling they were going to continue to buy that farmland.
I'm sure he paid some people off.
North Dakota's not only being bought up, but there's also a Chinese company.
Which we have said before that the Chinese government is the second. Bill Gates and then the Chinese government is buying the most.
The second largest owner of farmland in the nation, China.
Yes,
China. And do we care?
China.
Do we care?
Yes. Well, we care.
But does our government care? No.
Maybe a little, but it doesn't seem
John?
like it. I'm sure someone
They're
does.
all working for the same puppets.
Possibly. So on CNBC, I don't read a lot of CNBC, but here's from the article. It says, at first glance, the largely barren, wind-swept tract of land just north of Grand Forks, North Dakota, seems an unlikely location for an international espionage. Which at first, I read into certain articles.
Yeah.
CNBC is pretty liberal.
Yes.
They downplay even the value of land in North Dakota, which is some of the best, farmland in the country.
Right. And the farmland that they're trying to buy is like 20 miles from an Air Force base.
25 miles. So they downplay it right away.
Of course.
But it's wind-swept tract of land. Well, everything in the Midwest is windswept. That is where we live. That's
windswept.
Yeah, but it's still good land. So there's not much more on the 300-acre patch of prime Dakota farmland right now, other than dirt and tall grasses bordered by highways and light industrial facilities on the outskirts of the city. The nearest neighborhoods include a crop production company, a truck and trailer service outfit, Patio World, which,
Patio World in the middle of...
Well, we give you a big welcome, China. China, we welcome you.
Oh, my goodness.
To North Dakota.
Yeah.
Welcome.
So when the three North Dakotans who owned the parcels of land sold there for millions of dollars this spring, transaction raised alarm bells as far as Washington, D.C., because the buyer of the land was a Chinese company, the Fufang Group, based in Shandong, China.
The Fufang Group, I did a little research on them.
Yeah.
They're interesting because they own salt, right?
Okay.
So that's how their group started. Salt. I was twisting the salt. Yeah. And so that's what their group is under the cover of, right?
So
Salt.
Which is an interesting that they would move into farmland. If it's not salt related.
No.
Obviously.
But didn't you say that the land isn't actual? Because wasn't it?
No
corn?
One's doing.
It was a corn, right?
Something. It's not being tilled mostly right now, but it is good land to be. If someone has the ability.
So I just have a comment about farmers because we have a friend whose family owns farmland.
Farmer Bill.
No, and one of the brothers wasn't going to do. He was going to give his farmland a rest for the year. Yeah. And it upset the other brother, right? Because this is farmland, it makes us money.
Right.
So it makes me wonder if these farmers got paid years ahead by these groups, don't do anything on your farmland.
Right.
Let it be so it doesn't look like it's anything, and then we're going to buy it, right?
Yes. Oh,
So,
that's
like,
smart, Lonaiah.
That's
Yeah,
interesting.
of course. And,
Sleuthing.
but here's the thing. Even if it wasn't used, now it'll never be used.
Right.
Of course not.
And now that a Chinese company has it, it'll never be farmland. It'll
Yeah.
never grow anything.
Right.
They're supposedly going to be a corn milling plant. Who knows?
Corn
milling. So they're not going to produce any. They're going to take and make product out of it.
Right.
Is what they say. But is it going to stay in the U.S.? Most likely no.
Right.
Well, on that note, the Netherlands situation
Yes.
Netherlands.
is
the
very
Netherlands-
interesting.
Very interesting. I don't know if any of you have been paying attention or have heard about this, but in the Netherlands, the government is saying that they want to cut livestock by 30% and reduce nitrate emissions by 70%. So they're basically telling the farmers, we're going to come and take 30% of your animals, right, for our climate control problems. Well, the Netherland farmers they're protesting. I don't know if you guys have seen this, but they have like tractors and trailers blockading people. Yesterday, unfortunately, a 16-year-old boy who was driving his tractor away from the police, they ended up shooting and killing him. But they bought tanks and they're putting them in the way. They're like, we were working with the government, right? We had a plan for the farmland. Now the government is coming back and telling us that they're going to take 30% of our animals, and they don't want to do that. So they're protesting.
Right.
And you're not going to see that on regular news.
No.
NBC, you think NBC News
No.
is going to show the Netherland farmers protesting? Absolutely
But let
not.
me just say one thing. The Netherlands is the second largest agricultural exporter in the world. The U.S. is the largest, okay?
Yeah.
So the global food supply is already severely strained by the impact of the war in Ukraine. Many third world countries are already deep into food shortages,
Right.
and this is only going to exacerbate the issue.
Yeah.
Okay, and then I don't know if anybody saw, but the UN recently published an article called "The Benefits of World Hunger."
Yeah.
and they deleted it off of
4 hours later.
4 hours later, they took
Yeah.
it down.
They were like, oh, maybe this
Yes,
is bad timing.
And my sister is, we have a family group chat, and she sent a picture this morning
Yeah.
of the store in Target of the state she's in. There's like 2 boxes of frozen food. That's it.
Yeah.
Like, I mean, I know that's different subject, but I'm just saying.
It
It's
is,
coming
but
though.
it's
What they're
more-
doing is effective.
Yep.
Yes.
They're taking.
They are.
Just to sum that up. They're taking 30% of the farmers' animals in the Netherlands.
Right, and this
Right.
this
30%.
This,
all right,
and,
taking them.
Yeah,
right,
and
for
this-
climate control.
Climate control. I mean,
Wow. All right.
And what the farmers are doing with their protesting kind of reminds me of what the Canadians were
Right,
doing
the
with
trucker-
their freedom, the
yeah.
protests and the blockades, and how the government,
yeah.
was fighting against that. So I applaud these farmers for
Right.
Yeah,
for
please
sticking
fight.
up, and
Yeah,
we're praying for the farmers. in
pray
the
for the
Netherlands.
farmers
Yeah.
in Netherlands,
Yes.
Right.
and those people over there. But if we could go from there, because this lines up.
Right. Yep.
On John's got a White House comment that just says what they're doing.
Yes.
Yeah.
They're not even hiding what they're
No.
doing.
For sure. It's on Breitbart.com. The White House's National Economic Council Director D says paying high gas prices is about the future of the liberal world order. Thursday, during an appearance on CNN's Newsroom, National Economic Council Director Brian Deese defended President Joe Biden's remarks earlier in the day, claiming Americans have to deal with higher prices as the world grapples with an aggressive Russian President Vladimir Putin setting his sights on Ukraine. Deese called Biden's remarks a claim about what was at stake, which he called the future of the liberal world order. What you've heard from the president today was about the stakes. He said, this is about the future of the liberal world order, and we have to stand firm. But at the same time, what I'd like to say to that family, to Americans across the country, is if you have to present you have a present administration that is going to do everything in its power to blunt those price increases and bring those prices down. Good news on the last 2 weeks, we've seen prices at the pump come down about 20 cents, but it's still unacceptably high.
It's ridiculous.
Which it's in California, it's about $6.80
Yeah,
a
it's
gallon.
crazy.
In Illinois, it's five something.
They
Yeah.
want it high. They
yeah.
want
They
to
do want
bleed
it high.
America,
Yeah.
and this is why.
Yeah.
This new this new liberal world order. They said it,
Yes.
right? Not us.
No,
That they said it's their new liberal. That's part of it. Really high gas prices is part of it, so people can't afford to transport themselves.
Well, I mean, we are supposed to have a strategic oil reserve.
I was getting to that.
Yeah. So I was going to say what you're about to say.
It all
we're
just
supposed
ties
to
together.
be buffered by
Right.
a good administration, a good government, but
right. And I just want to say one thing about
now.
the Brian DC guy that made that comment. He was a former, I don't know if any of you have looked into BlackRock, but he is a former BlackRock executive, and he's now Biden's economic advisor. So BlackRock works hand in hand with the World Economic Forum.
Yeah.
Wow.
And so you know where we're headed. This is where it's headed.
Right.
And, on top of that, Lonaiah, you had something about, Biden is sending our oil reserves
5
overseas.
million barrels of reserve oil is being sent to China and Europe. And I don't know if any of you watched.
Why are we sending
it to
Because they're our friends now.
China.
They're buying farmland. They're buying farmland, so we're giving them oil.
But this article is from the Western Journal. I saw the White House interview where people were questioning Jean Pierre.
Yeah.
I don't remember her last name.
That.
And she's like, I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
So I was like, come on.
Yeah.
It's all over.
Yep.
But according to the report, this is from the Western Journal, shocking amounts of Biden's emergency oil reserves ended up in China and Europe. So millions of barrels of oil from the United States Strategic Petroleum Reserve were exported to Europe and Asia in June as the United States continued to face economic crisis. So the barrels were initially released as part of a historic effort to lower domestic fuel prices before making their way overseas. More than 5 million barrels of oil that were part of a historic U.S. emergency reserve release aimed at lowering domestic fuel prices. So that would have helped us.
Yeah, how
They were
how does that-
exported. They were exported. So now our record prices are at a high, right? So President Biden has recently blamed the price for high gas prices and limited oil supply at the feet of the U.S. oil. He also, I don't know if anybody saw, but he tweeted out and told the owners of gas stations to lower their prices and pay attention to the American people. I don't know if you guys saw it, but the U.S. oil Twitter tweeted
U.S.
back.
Oil and Gas Association.
Yes, and they tweeted back and were like, I don't know what intern is running your tweet right now, but that has nothing to do with us. And then Jeff Bezos replied back and was like, do you not understand economics 101?
Yeah.
Like, this is all on you.
It is madness.
So we have the United States refineries are operating at 94% capacity, which is among the highest in the world, but we just got rid of 5 million
to China
barrels of oil reserves.
To China.
On the first day of this administration's policy takeover, when President Biden was brought into office, they shut down the pipeline that would have over 800,000. Is it 800,000 gallons or 800,000 barrels a day?
800,000 barrels a day. He's had 39 sanctions against oil.
Right.
Since
So
he came in office.
I mean, of course, gas prices were going to go up ever since the very first day of his administration.
Right.
But in the end, what we're saying, and if you don't believe me, that's fine. You'll believe me in a couple of years. They want to control where you're going.
Right.
And this is how they can do it.
Yes.
Yeah.
If they get rid of the gas and the oil. And so we're going to go ahead and we're going to try a shorter version of the Final Hour podcast at 32 minutes and see if that doesn't get us more subscribers for the algorithms.
And Jim loves the algorithms.
Yes.
Algorithms.
And we appreciate you guys contacting us. I'm sorry we're a few behind in answering everybody that's contacted us, but it
was a holiday weekend.
We answer everybody personally. Thank you so much
John.
for contacting us. Thank you for every
listening.
viewer. Every listener, every subscriber.
Yes.
God bless you. I literally do. I pray the epistle prayers over you every single day. God bless you. Thank you for tuning in to the Final Hour podcast.